So I'm still an active realtor. So like I sell around 200 houses per year, every year for the last 3 years.
Where is the best areas in Cleveland? Like if you are a new investor today, just starting investing, where would you channel like a new investor, or where would you start investing as a new investor?
In Cleveland, essentially every single property will pass the DSCR test. So when I refi, they do cash flow. Some of them are $100 a door, some of them are $300-$400 a door. It's all in that range. I just don't pay attention to it very much because like that's not going to build wealth. It's the consistent equity buy-in that I think is where you can accelerate your wealth building. I hold on to as many properties as I can. As long as the management isn't a complete nightmare, that's where you build your wealth. It's you pay down the debt, you get a big depreciation right off every year.
Any tools and systems that you're using like today that you find have been like super helpful in the scaling of your business? Is there somebody that you can like refer them to, or who you would channel like new investors to, whether it's agent, whether it's contractors? Is there somebody that's like, hey, if you're a new investor in Cleveland, you got to know these people? Hey investors, Dave Hathaway. I have an amazing interview today with Josh Janus. We're going to dive in deep on how he scaled from 0 to 200 rental units, how he would do it if he started at 0 again today. Then we're also, and I'm equally excited to share the best areas to invest in Cleveland, because he's a local expert in both Cleveland and Columbus, where he finds the best deals in Cleveland and the biggest challenges that he has owning and managing rental properties, because there's lots of them. So in essence, we're going to give you a roadmap of how you can invest successfully in real estate if you just follow what Josh has done. Welcome, Josh. Thank you for spending some time and sharing some value with the audience.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it.
Can we start I know you've done a few interviews, but can we start on where you started at and how you got into real estate?
For sure. So about 4-ish years ago, I was studying computer science at Ohio State. Knowing I was going to have a decent income, I wanted to live on as little as I could and save up the rest. And I tried to figure out a good, powerful tool to utilize those funds to invest.
Yeah.
Started looking to real estate. I was door dashing on the side. So I was listening to audiobooks, door dashing like 60 hours a week, grinding. Read a lot about finance, real estate, like how to think about money, thinking about like your time, entrepreneurship. I wanted a house hack while I was at Ohio State. So live in one unit, rent out the other by buying a duplex. Ended up finding Remington Lyman on Bigger Pockets, who was an agent in Columbus. Went into the office. I saw like 20 guys that owned a whole bunch of houses under the age of 30, and it blew my mind. I was like, how am I ever going to attain that with the path that I'm going down? This didn't even seem real. And I started to try to learn, and I was cold calling, trying to find deals for an agent. Found a couple, started selling them, made some marketing fees, eventually got my license and started to buy my own. But that's kind of how it started.
Gotcha. And your first property that you purchased was a duplex that you ended up house hacking?
I actually never house hacked. I just started to buy stuff to renovate via the burn method. I'm a big risk taker. So also I'm young. I don't have any kids, so I can lose everything and just start over again. It's not really going to affect anybody. Now I have employees, but at the time it was just me. So,
and then how did you end up on like real estate? Were you on a lot of people do like an entrepreneurial journey where they are like buying and selling cars. It sounds like, I mean, DoorDash is very similar to like entrepreneurial, but how did you end up like, why did you pick real estate?
I always ran small businesses. I sold Mad Mobile coins in high school. I sold shoes. I made duct tape wallets. I sold like a software for getting shoes quickly on like sneaker drops. So I was always kind of doing little things like that. And I kind of just applied that thinking and systems that I built loosely to real estate.
And then you just kind of stumbled upon real estate as like, hey, reading up on the different podcasts and forums of like, hey, real estate's a really good way to make money. It's how a lot of people build their wealth, and just kind of went down that path.
Yeah, I had like somewhere in the range of 30 to 50K saved up from all my jobs and door dashing. And I was trying to figure out how to utilize that the best for my future.
Gotcha. And then why you purchased your first property? I want to zero in on that in Cleveland.
Yeah, so I was in Columbus cold calling, mostly in Columbus.
Okay.
And then I was calling a little bit in Cleveland as well because I'm from there. And I found a duplex for 80 grand. It looked like it needed about 40,000 renovations. And I knew from the sales comparables it was going to be worth about 165 to 170,000. So there was a good equity spread there at the end.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, I can spend $80,000 on this house, completely mess up the renovations and I still walk away even. So that's why I took a chance on that deal. I spent more than I was supposed to and got, contractor stole money, lied, cheated. We can talk about that later on. Happened a bunch of times. But yeah, that's how that started.
Gotcha. And then, so that was the first one that you purchased, and how did you purchase it?
So I used hard money.
Okay.
So I put about 15 grand down.
Yep.
They funded the rest of the purchase. I fronted the rehab money. And then as work would be getting done in the house, I'd send their inspector out and they would recoup the funds back to me for the renovation budget.
Gotcha. And that property you purchased, is that like 6 years ago?
No, it was like 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
June of 22.
And just to clarify, because I didn't say it off the start, how old are you?
Yeah, 24.
24. You're a lot younger than I am. So 24, 3 years. And then, so that first property you purchased for 80K, ARV was 170, which is after repair value. Then you ended up spending 50K.
I was supposed to spend 35 on it, but the guy that I hired was clearly not good. So I spent probably about 55.
And then, so you ended up having like 30 or 40K in like equity.
Well, it also took a year to finish. It should have been a 35K job done in 3 months. It was a 55K job in a year. And it was 2 different contractors I ran through. And the work was bad. So the tenants moved out and I had to redo all the flooring and a lot of the mechanicals. So I don't think I made $1 on that house, but I learned a lot.
You learned a ton. And then you continued to buy in Cleveland after that property?
Yeah. So I got that in June of 22. And then the next property that I bought was a package of 4 with a partner that we went 50-50 on completely. Those were all in Cleveland on the west side. So the first house was on West 117th. These other ones were in the range of West 100th to West 120th, basically.
Okay.
Those were all BRRRR deals as well. And I just started, taking off. So 2022, I bought $1.5 million of properties.
Gotcha.
2023, I bought $5 million. 2024, I bought $15 million.
Gotcha. So you're basically like tripling, 300%ing each year.
Yeah, that's the goal.
And then for your numbers, is there certain like criteria that you're looking for in your properties? Or actually, before we even bring that, you went from one property, and that first one that you did hard money, did you DSCR loan out of it? Did you refinance out of it and then start recycling your money, or how did you go from that first one to either the 4 unit or the 4 property package?
Yeah. So at this point, I got my license in January of 22, and I built up my realtor business to the point where it was making at least 50K a month. So I had a bunch of cash sitting. So that's why I started to buy quickly. So I got the first one in June, and I held the hard money loan for a year basically, and then refinanced it. The 4 other properties, we DSCR 2 and flip 2. And then I've basically just been doing that process over and over again. I don't actually have a single conventional loan in my name. Everything is non-QM debt. And I wasn't even qualified to do that until last year.
Gotcha. What is non-QF debt?
Or non-QM, non-conforming.
Okay.
So essentially any product that is not sold to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. Gotcha. So DSCR loans or debt service coverage ratio loans, it's just based on the performance of the property. So it works really well in Midwest markets like Cleveland because your rent to price ratios are favorable enough to where you can get loans literally just because the property will be able to service itself.
And you continue to buy in Cleveland. So I'm going to ask the question kind of again, why Cleveland, other than you grew up there? Why else like continue to invest in Cleveland?
So in 22, probably half of what I bought was in Columbus.
Okay. Because
there was still a lot of deal flow there. And the other half was in Cleveland. Cleveland, there's a lot of value add opportunity. It's a very distressed market. Every 3rd house is like bombed out. Even in like okay areas, not just like the horrible worst areas in the city. So if you're good at renovations and you're good at finding those deals, like you can make a lot of money, like doing the BRRRR method or fix and flips. So I was just basically trying to start that business there. And then Columbus was hot. I mean, if you owned a property in your name over 10 years, you would be getting cold called 20 times a day. An absurd amount. So I basically did the same thing in that market until everyone has gotten their house bought or they're so tired of getting called that they're not going to sell.
Got you. And when you're talking about Columbus being hot. Columbus, and correct me if I'm wrong, Columbus is a higher entry point for the market compared to Cleveland. Cleveland is closer to like a Baltimore market, like where I invest. Lots of bombed out buildings, lower entry point. Is that correct or no?
Yeah. Columbus is the same average rents, but double purchase prices.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so you still see more value in Cleveland just because of that rent price. Do you mainly look at cash flow when you look at purchasing properties, or what are you exactly looking at?
I don't look at cash flow. I don't even run cash flow numbers. I'm
Awesome.
literally just focused on what is the spread between the price plus holding costs plus renovation costs, that number. How
Yep.
much less is that number than what the building is actually worth when you get it to where you want it to be, the market value? So if there's enough of a spread there, I'm going to go after the deal within certain asset classes. I don't just buy anything, but
Okay. And what asset classes are those?
basically single family, small multifamily. I'll go into bigger multifamily when I can. I just haven't built the systems out as well for those yet.
And so are you holding those properties? Or are you flipping those properties?
I would hold all of them if I can, but I'm also trying to pay attention to taxes. I don't want to just have a mountain of depreciation. So I flip about 20 to 30% of them. So I cost segregate everything that I keep. Then I obviously flip the rest. So I try to even that out so that at the end of the year, I don't owe Uncle Sam anything.
Gotcha. I love that. I'm assuming you use some sort of specialist, or do you do it all, keep track of everything on your own as far as how much depreciation you have versus how much capital gains that you're going to have at the end of the year?
It's just it's teamwork between my accountant, my bookkeeper, and me. I don't have like a tax like specialist. You can, but I think it's good to learn yourself because then you can make decisions quicker. You don't have to wait on other people.
Yeah, I still struggle with that because I don't necessarily, in some of the investments that I make, I don't necessarily know what the loss is going to be, what the depreciation is going to be, because it's often in a different fund, and so I'm waiting on like a K1. Sometimes it's hard, and I'm like, how do I determine if I'm going to purchase or if I'm going to, invest more to get more depreciation?
It's not a simple thing, and I got punched in the teeth last year. I thought I was going to pay like 50 grand in taxes, and I paid like 230.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll speak on those things as much as you want. Obviously, nothing's legal advice, but I actually figured it out now. So, 24, not paying anything. Like I'm
Okay.
paying like the absolute minimum.
And what's your main strategy there? I know you spoke about cost segregation. Most people probably will have no idea what that is. I don't really want to go into cost segregation because I don't think it's necessarily. But is that the main thing that you're doing to lower your tax level, lower your taxes? Is just
So, I mean,
cost
I'll go as
segregation?
nitty gritty as you want. I'll touch a few things. So, yeah, cost
Sure.
segregation. Buildings depreciate every year, like 3% for residential property. A cost seg study allows you to like pull that into the present, so you can roughly write off like 20% of the value.
Yep.
Depends on a whole bunch of things, but that's one. Another thing I do is any active business income, so fix and flips, wholesale deals, commission, anything like
Uh,
that. I run that through an S corporation. So this way, you literally are setting up a corporation. And in a
yep.
corporation, there are the shareholders and then there's the employees of the company. Shocker, you're both. But the money that flows to the shareholders, you don't have to pay that self-employment tax.
Yep.
You can put a lot of money into that category at every scale, whether you make 100K, 500K, 5 million, doesn't matter.
Yep.
So that helps a ton. The other big concept too is if you have a bunch of rentals, whether it's 2 houses or 100, doesn't really matter. Like I set up an entity within the S corp that all of the rent income flows through that entity. So you take advantage of the 20% deduction pass through bill. There's a max on that. I don't know the max, but that's easy too. That's good for liability as well.
And so
Yeah, those are
just by putting in an S corp, you're avoiding paying 15% on all your gains for all that active income.
yep.
Correct? Yeah,
Yeah.
huge for
And then
the self-employment tax. Yeah, I know.
and then like the other side, so there's the S corp tree, and then there's like your normal tree, like
Yep.
your rentals. So any non-back, so like that's cash flow, passive income, stuff that's like you're sitting and you're not doing a whole lot with it. A lot of people don't even depreciate their properties. Like make sure you take advantage of that. You don't have to do the cost seg, but at least take advantage of the 27.5 year amortization of residential or 35 of commercial. So if you pay 100 grand for a property and it's a duplex, you get to write off 3 grand a year paper loss for doing nothing. Like just you might as well do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't understand it. I don't know if TurboTax or any of these like free programs like tell you to do it or don't tell you to do it, but in essence, you're able to not pay taxes on your rents if you can depreciate the same amount off of a property. And so it allows you to kind of not pay taxes at all, because I think it's misunderstood. It's just pay the taxes once you sell the property. So you can continue reinvesting all these taxes that you would have paid every year and just reinvest them in different properties. So you're making more money up front and then just paying it on the back end. And you're paying the same percentage that you would have paid on the back end. You're just paying it later. So you're deferring it. I think a lot of people, I struggled understanding that for like the longest time of like, what is deferring taxes and when do you pay them? But how important it is that if you don't have to pay taxes for like 10 years and you can just be making money in recycling investment properties, it's a humongous wealth builder. I feel like most people don't understand that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
In addition, so do you have a specific buy box that you're like, hey, this is exactly the properties, the value, the bedrooms, bathrooms? Do you have a specific buy box in Cleveland, Columbus?
Yeah, it's pretty much just single family through 4 units.
Okay.
If I can be all in 70 to 75% of the ARV and it's not in a D or F class area, I'll buy it.
Is there a dollar amount? Do you like search it to a dollar amount, or if somebody says, hey, I got this $1.5 million property that is 75% ARV, does that fit the buy box? Or is there
I would do it, but
Okay.
those deals are really rare to find something that high where you have that much spread. I just did a 16 unit like that, but I mean, that's one out of very difficult to do. It's easier on like duplexes. So
Gotcha. Are you ever, and so you're not really concerned about cash flow, is what you said earlier, correct? Your main concern is ARV, that you're building equity. Do you ever run into any issues with your DSCR loans, or you just have to put more money down, or
in Cleveland, essentially every single property will pass the DSCR test. So when I refi, they do cash flow. Some of them are $100 a door. Some of them are $300-$400 a door. It's all in that range. I just don't pay attention to it very much because like that's not going to build wealth. It's the consistent equity buy-in that I think is where you can accelerate your wealth building. Because investors tend to focus on cash flow. They run numbers. I want something that makes $200 a door versus $157 a door. It's like, well, if I bring you a deal where you buy something $10,000 under market immediately, you pay $150 and it's worth $160, and you sell it in 2 years, or you 1031 it in 2 years, take 10 grand, divided by 24 months, and you're making whatever that is, hundreds of dollars every single month. You don't realize it for 2 years on top of whatever your original cash flow is. So I try to harp on like paying attention to both return types, immediate equity and cash flow.
Yeah, I think a lot of people struggle. I love that. I think that's a misnomer for most new investors. They really focus on, at least myself, I really focused on cash flow. And then as you progress in your journey, maybe 5-7 years down the road, once you start selling properties, you go, man, I'm making way more money on like the appreciation and the equity than I ever did on the cash flow. But a lot of people get stuck in that loop of like, well, how am I going to retire from my job with like no cash flow, or like $100 or $200 cash flow? And I also want to make a reference there that maybe you do this as well, but a lot of times I'll make money off the refi, and sometimes it's down the road, but I feel like a lot of people sleep on that. Instead of always have to be you selling a property, you can refi your property after 5 to 7 years, and maybe you get a $20 or $30 or $40,000 equity that was built up in there. Is that something that you see similar?
Yeah, I haven't done it long enough to really realize a ton of that yet, but I hold on to as many properties as I can. As long as the management isn't a complete nightmare, that's where you build your wealth. You pay down the debt, you get a big depreciation right off every year. Like if you have a $10 million portfolio, I'm gonna do the math because I want to make sure I get it right. Let's say, or let's go $5 million portfolio. 5 million. 5 million divided by 27.5. Your first $180,000 that you net every single year is tax free.
That's awesome.
Just by owning the buildings. That's whether the building makes money or not, on top of all the other things. So it's like, get as much good real estate debt as you can, and you can build so much tax-free wealth that way.
So correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm definitely not great at taxes. It's not tax-free, it's tax deferred, correct? Even though we say tax-free, you're going to pay on the back end when you sell the building. Am I wrong? I could be off.
So in the cost seg, yes, that is going to, you're going to have the recapture. Okay. If you 1031 a building, you essentially can take the losses that you had that you would have to payback and you just put into the new property. So you're actually not paying those taxes. If you don't 1031, then you're going to have to pay the recapture. What I'm talking about here is just the normal depreciation. So that the IRS gives you that write-off every year because you're holding onto a building that is falling apart slowly every day, and you get that. So that 180K, I don't have to pay that back.
Gotcha.
That's just a write-off you get every single year. And then if I sell the whole portfolio, I'm not paying that back.
So the only thing investors have to pay attention to, which I actually not a huge fan of 1031s. That's just my personal thing. But the only thing they have to pay attention to if they're 1031ing and then selling a building, or if they're starting to do cost segregations, then they have to pay.
Yeah. Just be aware of the accelerated depreciation that you used on cost segregations. Got to pay attention to that because you can get wiped out if you aren't careful.
And is that where you made the mistake, the learning lesson of paying a lot more in taxes than you were anticipated paying in taxes?
It was a combination of you can't depreciate properties that you flipped within a year. That's one.
Yep.
Number two, I just had different write-offs that I thought I had that I didn't. Number three, I lost a whole bunch of money to contractors and I wasn't able to write off those losses in the way that I thought that I could. Like I can't pay a guy for a furnace and then he doesn't put the furnace in. And then I pay a new guy for the exact same furnace. I don't get to write off both furnace payments because there's only one furnace. So that was like $250,000 right there.
Interesting. So I've been investing for 15 years. I often find that I'm still learning like all the time. So unfortunately, you're still going to be learning. And I feel like sometimes people think that even if people are ahead in the season, like investing game, it's like, oh, you should know everything. It's like, dude, I'm talking to like another specialist or a different rule. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. I'll be talking to my accountant and he'll be like, I thought you knew this. I'm like, no, I didn't know this. He's like, well, you've been doing it right. I'm like, I'm glad I've been doing it right. But there's so many different like intricacies that, and it's okay to make, a lot of times we don't learn until we make the mistake and go, now it makes sense. Now I understand it. But until you make that mistake, it doesn't even like cross your mind. So it's like, oh, it's just floating out there. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Of course.
Because I know a lot of people, sometimes I feel like to a fault, we are just like, hey, I don't want to pay any taxes. I don't want to pay any taxes. And I also feel like you don't want to swing too far to that pendulum because sometimes it might be okay to pay some taxes and not defer them to future periods, especially if you're in a super low tax bracket. If you're paying like 15% taxes, sometimes it's okay to be like, okay, let me just pay these taxes right here. But
yeah, for lending too, that like you can't show that you're making no money 5 years in a row. It's going to be hard to get a lending on big buildings. So
moving on, what is the best investing strategy that you think in Cleveland? Is it the Burr strategy or do you think flips are a better strategy right now?
I would start with buy and holds first to kind of build your team out. Get a bunch of people that you're relying on that are relying on you. They know who you are. You have relationships. Things go wrong, they can handle it. And then I would say go to Burrs next if you want to, and you have the capital necessary, you have the risk tolerance, you have the time investment. Then if that goes well, then I would try flipping because your personal criteria for the quality of finishes is going to be less than anybody that's buying flips. AKA you could do a worse job and you can just eat the annoyance of it versus somebody else because they're going to pound you in price reductions when you're in contract.
Gotcha. And that's what you're seeing right now, like today, right now in the market. No, you said your strategy was like, hey, I'd like to hold as many as I can. Would you switch to like a flipping strategy if the market was necessary to?
The reason why I say start with like turnkey is because these are 100-year-old properties. They're historically distressed areas, and you could dump so much money into them, like an absurd amount of money. And you have to learn over time through actually owning the rentals. Oh, I should spend $500 there. Oh, why did I spend $1,000 on this thing? I don't need to do it. Like you actually figure out where the money needs to go. And then when you start to do your burrs, you can adjust your renovation criteria to what you learned on your turnkeys. And then the things that you missed, the things that you overdid, you can adjust. And then when you go to flip, it'll actually meet what the market is looking for. So that's why I say go to that path. I wouldn't only ever burr or only ever flip because it's the tax game. If you only flip, you get destroyed in taxes every year. If you only burr, then you have all of this depreciation. You could be losing hundreds of thousands of dollars on paper every year. You might as well go flip, make the money, and negate the taxes out. So that's why I say it's kind of like a balancing beam game once you actually have a system going.
Gotcha. Where is the best areas in Cleveland? Like if you are a new investor today, just starting investing, where would you channel like a new investor, or where would you start investing as a new investor?
Anywhere in the west side of Cleveland is fine. Stockyards are a little but I mean, other than that, like I wouldn't be afraid of any street on the west side. East side, I like North Buckeye Shaker, kind of Larchmere area, North Collinwood, Lee Miles. Depends where. You kind of want to be east of Lee Road, 44105, Garfield Heights. Those are kind of all the areas that I target the most.
Gotcha. When you talk about like best areas in Cleveland, or when you're looking at it, do investors in Cleveland talk zip codes, or do they talk like how you were talking like Garfield?
Everybody talks different ways. So I have a graded neighborhood map that I made that's like very street by street in terms of A through F class. So I kind of just focus on the C class areas.
Okay. And is that any particular reason why you focus on the C class areas?
The framework that I placed on the market, A, is too expensive for anything. There's barely any flip opportunities. B is those annoying suburbs with point of sale inspections, really high taxes, not much value add opportunity there either, not much cash flow either. C class, bulk of the rental population, most value add spread. D and F's just rough areas.
Nice. For taxes in Cleveland, you just mentioned like certain areas are like super high taxes. Is that just because of property values? I know Baltimore has like a similar, in like the really good areas, taxes are like crazy high. It's like a $300,000 building. It's like 9 or 10 grand of taxes. Is this similar in like Cleveland, where like super high value neighborhoods are super high taxed? And then those C class areas, you can find some like amazing arbitrages of like $800 a year in taxes.
Yep. What you said is the same thing here.
Gotcha. Do you ever look for those? Like are you like scouting for those arbitrages ever?
Well, they do a mass reappraisal of every property every 3 years. So everything kind of, there's nothing like super low.
Okay. So Baltimore, there is like massive arbitrages. But you do, and I think Philly is the same way, but you run the risk if you're like running your numbers with those. Like, I think I have some properties that are, I want to say like $200 or $400 a year taxes, and they're like $200,000 properties. Eventually they're going to get, but if you're running your numbers only on those, the reason I bring this up is I had an interview recently with somebody from Philly, and it kind of jarred me, where she was like, the city just did like a mass for Philadelphia, a mass reassessment of all these different areas, and a lot of people's taxes like tripled or quadrupled. I always thought that like couldn't happen, just because a lot of neighborhoods in Baltimore are like impoverished, and it would like displace a lot of residents. They wouldn't be able to afford it. But you're saying you don't see that big of a disparity in Cleveland like I see in Baltimore? It's
similar, just doesn't seem to be as extreme as your case.
Gotcha. And you're saying like most of the properties in those C class areas kind of like bundled together. And then as the areas appreciate, taxes go up.
Yep.
Baltimore is the same thing with a 3-year tax period. And then they tier up your taxes over those 3 years. So they reassess it every 3 years, and then they usually tier it up over 3 years. So if they reassess your property from 100 to 150, then year 1, it's 110, year 2, it's 130, year 3, it's 150. And then so your taxes are like that. The reason that's important to investors is that it's going to affect your cash flow, right? If taxes go up, cash flow will go down.
If you buy a big building, I'll give you a tip on how to potentially avoid all that in Cleveland, and it kind of works anywhere.
Yeah,
it's called a drop and swap. So most investors do this on commercial properties. Say it's a 20-unit building and it's worth $2 million right now, but the county thinks it's worth $1 million. And if you go pay $2 million, the taxes could potentially go way up, right? Not double because of the way that the brackets work, but maybe go up, 40%. What you want to do is the current owner probably has the property in an LLC or a trust or some entity. Instead of buying the building, buy the LLC for the price of the building. Or if it's in an LLC that they have a bunch of other properties in, have them quit claim the deed from their current LLC to a new LLC that you buy. And a lot of commercial lenders will allow you to get a loan in the property in that LLC. So when you go to the county, all that's happening in the county's eyes is the property either isn't moving at all because all you do is buy the company, or B, it's just getting quit claim from one entity to another. And they don't see that $2 million transfer in the auditor. So the taxes would theoretically stay the same in that case.
Gotcha. On the HUD, is that you're just paying on the HUD? Does it just show that you're paying for the same price as the building was, or how does that show on like the HUD? Or is there?
Yeah, the HUD looks the same. you just aren't submitting it to the county that way because you aren't actually buying the property. You're buying the company that owns the property.
Gotcha.
So you'd have to do like your own separate title search and get your own separate title insurance on it. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't do it all in one swoop the normal way, but you're still protecting yourself in every way that you would in a normal transaction. Some areas are real picky, and when big buildings sell, they're going to look on the recorder's office and see if there's new mortgages filed, and they will file it. The school board will file a complaint, and they'll be like, hey, look, there's a brand new mortgage, twice of the value, and then they'll try to push the value up. Not everybody does that. A lot of people do that. A lot of the cities do that in Columbus, but it doesn't happen as often in Cleveland. So, but there's a tip if you ever buy big buildings, do that.
No, I love that. I've actually never heard of that. That sounds like an awesome strategy. It makes complete rational sense. And yeah, sometimes, and it depends on what jurisdiction. Some jurisdictions don't reassess based upon when you purchase a property. Some depends on states, right? I mean, some states actually will only reassess when the building's sold, and others do it every 3 years. Some do 5 years, some do less. So it always depends on your state, but I'm sure this strategy probably works in multiple states. Seems super rational. Love that. Is there any areas in Cleveland that you tell investors they should be cautious investing in those areas? They're pretty rough.
Yeah, like East Cleveland, 44108, 44103, 44104, west side of 44106. Like a lot of just the city of Cleveland on the east side is rough.
Gotcha. Is there a dividing line? Like, how do you know? I don't have a map of Cleveland up right now. I can pull it up real quick, but how do you know, like, what's the east side of Cleveland compared to the west side? Is there a dividing street that's like a main street, like MLK, that comes up that you say, hey, to the west of MLK is east side, and to the right?
It's so street by street.
Okay.
Like some people just go, the entire east side I won't touch. And I like those people because then I could take advantage of the little pockets that they're missing out on. I have a map that I made that looks like a rainbow because it's at literally every block and every street.
Do you got
like 100 hours for me to make that? No, I don't.
Okay.
No, but it's a Google map overlay. Like I drew boxes.
Cool.
But,
yeah, I have one for Baltimore too.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
It's downstairs though in the office. No, that's awesome. Most challenging part of investing in rental properties. What have you found is most challenging?
I do a lot of things. So I own a management company. I own a construction company with 50 plus employees. So I think the most challenging part right now is the contracting part. Not the last 5% of the house being done. It's always a challenge. I get every house 95% done. And then they're tired of going in there because they're like, Josh, this house looks way better than what it was. I'm like, yes, but there is nobody between you and the tenant. So the house has to be ready for a tenant other than a cleaning lady. That's fine. You can delegate the cleaning, but you got to do everything else. So it's always just a hassle. Those final walkthrough list of 20 small things.
So you're saying the most challenging last 5%, basically the punch out list, most challenging.
Yeah, that and then the trying to refinance 30 properties at once, DSCR, it's a nightmare. That too.
Gotcha. I recently had a conversation a couple months ago. It's with somebody else that owns their own construction company, and they had brought up this same issue. And I had noticed in my own business, I like to pride myself that like I'm pretty good at like GCing projects. And they said, man, the punch out list is always the worst. And we couldn't solve the issue. So what we did is we created its own position. It's like the punch out guy. And so all they do is go around and do punch outs for this construction company. It's been like a game changer. So maybe that's what you need for the contract.
Oh, I do that.
That's Josh.
Yeah.
That's just your position.
Craig.
Okay.
Craig.
So you got, okay.
That's what he does.
And that has not solved the issue still?
No, that helped. It's just when you go from buying, 1.5 to 5 million to 15 in 2 years, it's just like
quality.
There's always 5 things going wrong. That's all.
Yeah, no, quality assurance is always challenging. Growth is challenging. I mean, if a new investor comes to you and they say, hey, I want to do exactly what you did, Josh, are you recommending them to do your exact path? Or are you recommending maybe slower growth? What will be your recommendation? I want, and I'm sure you've heard that question. I want to do exactly what you've done, Josh. Would you say, yeah, it's great?
Yeah, so I'm still an active realtor. So like I sell around 200 houses per year, every year for the last 3 years. So that I'm like, hey, if you want to do exactly what I did, the only way this is possible really is to have another business that is cash flowing that I could dump into investing, or you find like an equity partner, you do all the work and they bring all the cash. So if you want to scale up as quickly as I did, I think those are like, you got to have one with the other or both. So I've been on about 2,000 Zoom calls to 3,000 Zoom calls with new buyers in the last like 36 months. So yeah, I get this question all the time. And that's like something that I say.
Yeah.
I try to ask them, like, how much money are you making every month that you can invest on the side, whether it's a business, whether it's your job, can you work more hours? Just investing takes a while to actually consistently make money every month. It takes a while to like build all that up the way that I invest. And I know how to renovate duplexes in Cleveland, Ohio. I don't try to say that I'm a real estate guru everywhere. It's like, that's what I know how to do. So like, I'll tell you about that.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm just wondering, would you like recommend an investor, somebody has zero experience that just wants to follow your exact path? Would you say, hey, this is the best path? Or would you say, hey, I think that newer investors should just purchase like 1 to 2 properties a year? I know you laid out a kind of a roadmap earlier of what you thought they should go through, but do you think an investor should purchase as many properties as they want, or do you think they should kind of take it slow off the gates?
Usually slow, but it's also their goals.
Yeah.
People are in different situations. If it's a 30-year-old guy and he's got no kids and he's got 200 grand in his bank and he's saving 5-10K a month, I'm like, dude, go for it. Go hire 3 contractors. Go make a whole bunch of mistakes. Go buy a bunch, because you can afford to do it and you're trying to get to that next level. If you're 40 or 30, you got a wife, you got 2 kids, you got 50K in the bank, we don't need to be doing all this. Just buy 1 to 2 a year, chill, so you don't like destroy your life trying to renovate houses. So it's like, I'd really try to pay attention to their life.
I love that. I love that answer. Usually I'm trying to I'm trying to pump people's brakes. I'm like, you don't want 50 properties in like 3 months. You're going to be overstressed, and the growth anytime you grow any business at all, you're going to just run into roadblocks, and you're going to have to be problem solving and adapting. I'm sure you have been doing this over the 3 years. And it just, especially if you have family and kids, it adds a stress on top of stress. And then you're going to pass those to your kids regardless, because it's just how we are. Everything is a family business, right? I mean, whatever's going on in our lives is going on with all of our people in our lives. So I do like that advice that you're looking at kind of their background. And usually when it's like, hey, you can house hack, but then it's like the guy that's married that has 3 kids, like, probably not house hacking for your first property. It's probably not for you. So that's great. I like how you're catering that advice. Any tools and systems that you're using like today that you find have been like super helpful in the scaling of your business?
I actually have a whole Google Drive folder with every spreadsheet, all my rules, tons of procedures, Google Docs, development information, neighborhood information on Cleveland that I share. And every time I change something in my own investing process, I'll take the template or the format and throw it in that Google Drive folder. So I share that with everybody that reaches out.
Cool. Is it possible you can share it with me?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
Awesome. I'll put it down in the video description.
I like to keep things simple. Like, I don't want to overcomplicate. I have like 4 spreadsheets. I have a utility spreadsheet. I have a spreadsheet that has like the mortgages, the payments, the unit status. Is it done? Is it being refinanced? Whatever. I got another spreadsheet that shows like my incoming cash, my outgoing cash, what's being refi, what's being flipped, what's in contract. Don't get like a million softwares and pay all this money and do all these things. You can kind of manage a lot with just like a handful of Google spreadsheets.
Yeah. You're just talking about like basic like spreadsheets or Microsoft Excel spreadsheets, correct?
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. And like a huge practice that I do daily that has allowed me to scale to this point is every time I do something new, I get my pencil or pen and I write exactly what I did. I emailed a lender about the appraisal. The buyer asked about how much does the water cost for a duplex. I looked up comps of a 3-bed, 1-bath and 4-for-110, right? I write down all of those things. And every day it's like 100 things. It's a little bit less now because I've systemized it. But then I look at the end of the day and I'm like, all right, can I write a process for this? Is this actually making me money, or can I not do this? Can I do this once a week, once a month, once a day? Free up your time. Get it off your plate. Because like when you're an investor, your time is worth so much. And as you scale, it becomes worth even more. And you got to pay attention to how you're actually utilizing your day. And I keep building on that. I try not to do anything that is under my dollar amount per hour that I set based on my income. And then anything that isn't making me money, I don't want to do.
Gotcha. I love that. I have a similar kind of philosophy, but it really goes, if I do something twice, then I should have a process for it. Like there should be like bells going off. Hey, I'm writing the same email twice, whatever, if it's welcoming tenants, whatever it is. There should be like an email template that the assistant can just go and click. And that's one thing that's definitely been like super helpful for us is just, even if a lot of these things for like appraisers and refinances, it's the same thing that you're doing over and over and over again. And there's lots of different templates, especially in Google, where just with email templates, you can create a bunch of different email templates. I think I have like 12 that you don't have to write the email out. It's already written. Maybe you just have X's in there and then you just put in the name and say, there you go. Is that something that you do as well?
Oh yeah. I had a lot of templates, and you'd be surprised how much you actually don't have to do. So when I go to refinance a property, I have a system built out to where once I approve the interest rate and the points and the fees, I don't do anything in the process. I don't schedule the appraisal. I don't send them comps. I don't talk to the lender. I don't do anything until I sign the closing docs in front of a notary.
Okay.
Every step in the process, I have a virtual assistant do, or I have templates built out to do.
And then how are you? So I love this question. Thank you for sharing. So you have virtual assistants. How many virtual assistants do you have?
I have 3.
3. Are they in the Philippines?
Yep, they're in the Philippines. Husband, wife, sister.
Okay. And did you specifically hire them personally, or did you hire I don't even know what the companies are called, but they're like outsourcing agencies. Did you go through an outsourcing agency and they like provide?
I got them in a unique situation. You can find them on like Upwork.com.
Yep.
That's what I suggest.
Okay. Upwork, Fiverr. I mean, you can go and you can interview. So you're using 3 VAs, and then your process here, because I'm actually really curious. We use Trello a ton. There's like Trello, Asana, Monday. It's all workflow processes. And that's how I write out all the different processes for our VA. How is the VA knowing what to do in the process? Is it just a document? Is it like a Word document, or how do they know like to do all this stuff for a refi that you're just talking about?
It started with them and I on a Zoom, them just watching me work. And I was like, take notes, everything that I'm doing. If you have questions, let me know. And then together we started building processes. And they just, every communication that comes into me, whether it's an email, a call, a voicemail, a text, goes through them first. Okay. And if either it requires my personal input, I will answer it. If they don't know what to do, or it's like banking information or something personal like that, I will do. If it's something that they don't understand yet, I'll do it. I'll explain it to them, or I'll write out a Google Doc, I'll record my screen, and then they'll do it. So that's the big framework of what it is. And I organize it all on Google Docs, which is like a process. And then I take like a process and I create like maps, like mapping. Okay. Like I have a map that's literally when a new buyer comes in, all the way through them closing on the house and getting the keys. Every step in the process is all written out, all of the contingencies, all of the ands and ors, and then where I have to be involved. There's like 4 points in a closing process where I have to be involved. All the other 30 points I don't have to do.
You're just talking about like a box chart.
Yeah, flow chart.
With arrows. Okay, awesome. I love that. And similar, thank you for sharing that. Although that's a little bit advanced for most newer investors, but it is good to kind of start these processes. I do something that's similar. My stuff is a lot more like checklists. Okay. And then we'll have, and how we have it set up, just to share value with everybody, as I feel like it's like the most important thing that I've done. It took forever to set up a bunch of these processes, but it's a video. What you talk about, your screen record, it's a video always at the top of the process. And then it actually is me going through, or the assistant going through the process. So if they ever forget it, or we hire somebody new, they can do the process, even though there's a bunch of check boxes. But then underneath the video is all the different steps of the process. And usually there's like 10 or 15, could be a refi, could be a purchase, could be a tenant move out turnover. And so there's a lot of different processes in real estate. If you're not just doing one strategy, if you're selling, if you're refining, if you're holding, if you're managing and you don't have a third party manager. And so and it also allows you to do like super quality assurance, I would assume, where if you don't have a process, you're like, oh, that something went wrong, but I don't know where it went wrong. And if you're following a checklist, you can see, oh, we skipped that spot. Or a lot of times what happens is, oh, we need another step in the process. Let's just add that in.
Yep.
Is there any real estate association groups that you're like, or meetup groups in the Cleveland area that you're like, hey, if you're investing here, you should definitely be a part of this like group?
I didn't really go to any meetups up until the last few months. So Investor Source is good. I went
Gotcha.
to one or two of theirs, but I didn't really learn anything. That's not how I learned real estate.
You learn by trial by fire, I'd assume.
Yeah, I make mistakes or I just harass individual successful investors.
Gotcha. And you have not, I know you mentioned briefly property management. Like if you have a good property management, do you self-manage all your properties?
It's all in-house now.
It's all in-house.
Like I don't communicate with the tenants. I have a property manager I hired to just do mine.
And did you have issues prior? Why did you bring it in-house other than it's a lot of cost savings?
Yeah, cost savings. We could do an hour on that. But what I would say most people that get hundreds of units take it in-house. Once you get to like 100 units or 80 units, I mean, depends on your gross income. I would do it. You save so much money and you're more efficient.
Yeah. I found that I was struggling to find a property manager that can manage all a scattered site portfolio. And there's just different things that you have to be really squared away. In Baltimore, we have to be really squared away on evictions. If you're like off by like one sentence, it's going to be like drastic. And I found that you got to just be firing on all cylinders and not miss any other part of the process, or else you might restart the eviction process that takes 3+ months in Baltimore.
Jeez.
Is it how's the eviction process in Cleveland similar or no? Quicker?
Like 3 to 4 months.
Okay, 3 to 4. Yeah, it's still a long.
I've never evicted anybody though.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. One of the last questions as we kind of round out the interview, and I appreciate your time, Josh. If you're a new investor coming to Cleveland, you don't know anybody other than Josh and Dave Hathaway because you've listened to this. Is there somebody that you can like refer them to, or who you would channel like new investors to, whether it's agent, whether it's contractors? Is there somebody that's like, hey, if you're a new investor in Cleveland, you got to know these people?
I mean, I'm an active agent. I just help new investors or people that maybe they have like 1 or 2 houses. So you can reach out to me. I have a whole team I can present to you: contractors, lenders, inspectors, everybody that you need. So I've helped 300 people buy real estate in Cleveland. Probably 250 of them are out of state.
Awesome. Cool. And then what does your future in real estate look like? Is it just continuing to 300% X your portfolio, or are you going to go into anything different? What does your future in real estate look like?
Yeah, keep scaling. I'd like to build out a construction company where I can help other people do burrs and flips, because right now mine's just in-house. I want to build a bunch of affordable housing in the rough areas of Cleveland and kind of like build a community center there. I'm very faith driven, so I'd like to figure out a way to give back to the community in a productive way. So yeah, those 2 things.
No, I love that you mentioned that. In that note, has your faith helped you as an investor?
Of course. Yeah. So leaning into the relationships of people that putting first that I want you to be good and I want you to do good and I want you to feel good. And I'm going to, sometimes I got to step out of my way and do something extra. Sometimes you got to do the same thing. But when you create a community and positivity of people that are actually trying to improve themselves in a bunch of manners and in a bunch of ways, it's insane what you can accomplish. And I got a bunch of guys on my team that, they got rough backgrounds. They've done things that you wouldn't be comfortable with but they've redeemed themselves. They've come back. They're wanting to do better. And I try to do that through I'm a follower, and I try to do that through being good and putting that first. And it seems to pay off when it's reciprocated in a way, or it's at least somebody not out to just destroy and take, which I've realized most people are actually not like that. There's some, but a lot of people are really not like that. And that's why the world works. It's insane. Like even driving blows my mind every time. It's thousands of pounds going across each other that you could just kill someone. That could happen every second, but we figured out a way to work together. So always leaning on the fact that I think people are inherently good, and finding the right relationships and putting that first. Like with contractors, for example, I don't use any contracts for any of the houses. So like my guy literally goes to the house and I tell him, I can spend $50,000 in this house. And he walked through it and he knows, maybe he can do the house for 30 or 35 or 45. Right. But I'm going to show my cards up front to him. He's going to show his cards up front to me. We're not going to sign any paperwork, because I really care about our relationship, because it's like, hey, yes, I want to make money in this house. I want you to make money in this house, but it's about that. We're going to continue to do houses together. We're going to continue to build onto this system. And that seems to work so far.
Yeah. I love that. Real estate, I'd even almost go one step further and say relationships are the most important piece in real estate. I know it's like maybe a more bold statement, but in life as well. And I appreciate you sharing your faith as a believer. I am as well. Maybe this is a door opener for anybody that is curious or questioning and wants that door to be opened. It's always opened. It's always there for you. It will always be there for you. We're all definitely broken people. So
we're all broken. I believe in, like,
I think, yeah.
I was gonna say, I believe in the Bible. Like, if God gives you gifts, use them to the best of your ability. That's why I still get up at 5 a.m. every day. I don't have to. I could just go sit on a beach. And I'm not saying that to be ego or anything like that. It's literally just like, I've been presented things that I have to do something with. And I believe that he's not going to put you in front of anything that you can't handle. So I always have that mindset. And if you get people around you, you can do some pretty unbelievable things.
Yeah. Thank you so much for getting vulnerable and sharing.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. If people want to reach out to you directly, Josh, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
My Instagram is Josh Janus, Janus is my last name. You can just look up my name, my email and phone numbers everywhere, or you can go on my Bigger Pockets profile. I reach back. So you got any questions, happy to help.
Cool. Yeah, I'll put all your Instagram and your Bigger Pockets profile and your email and phone number in the description. And just thank you everybody for sharing the time. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. Reach out to myself, reach out to Josh. And thanks for learning about real estate investing and building wealth. We'll see you on the next episode.
See you.